and welcome back to another Last Minute Laura crochet tutorial. We're gonna jump right into it. Today we're making a basic beanie, super chunky, easy crochet hat. This one is one of those basic patterns that everybody should know. It's worked entirely in the back loop of the stitch, and it's only gonna take you maybe an hour to complete. Maybe the first one will take you 2 hours, but after that, it's only gonna take you an hour. Look at how big and chunky this thing is gonna be. This is what we're making today. So, for this project, you're going to need a 6mm crochet hook. This one was actually sent to me by a subscriber and a member of the Last Minute Laura morning show community. Her name's Barb. Thank you so much, Barb, for the wonderful Christmas present. I use these pretty religiously now. 6mm though, that's what you need. You also need some chunky yarn. I actually used 2 strands of yarn. I used a thick white wool as well as a mixed acrylic wool blend that I used one of each strand, and that created a very chunky, very soft and plush hat, which I really like. This hat has a huge amount of room to keep your ears warm. It's kind of like a hat with an ear warmer built right in. You can see it's got that big, huge brim. And I really like it. It's extra warm, which is great for these Canada winters. And yeah, grab your stuff, grab your supplies, and let's jump into it. Okay, so to begin, we're gonna start with a slip knot. And then we are going to chain 50. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so at this point, your chain is, if you stretch it out, about 16 inches long. Now what we're gonna do is half double crochet in the 3rd chain from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, and then half double crochet across. Okay, at the end of that row, chain 1 and turn. And that is your first row. You can see it's gonna be a long beanie, but you'll see why. At this point, it is 15 inches long. We lost just about an inch by working into that 3rd chain. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to half double crochet, but for the first stitch, we're gonna half double crochet between the 2 stitches in this big hole. That's gonna keep your edges nice and tight. Ugh, it's a little tight with these 2 strands of yarn. Okay, there we go. And now for the next stitch, and for all the stitches until you hit the last stitch, we're gonna crochet back loops only. So what that means is when you normally are crocheting, you're going into this V. You're putting your hook right in the middle of that stitch with 2 pieces of yarn over and 1 piece of yarn under. What we're gonna do today instead is we're only gonna put it into that back piece. This is gonna create a subtle rib, something easy, but still adds just a little bit more interest. So we're gonna do back loops only, half double crochet all the way across, and then in that last stitch, we're gonna do the same thing we did in the first stitch. It just secures the first and last stitch, keeps the rows nice and straight, nice and tight, and gives you a nice finished product. So half double crochet in every stitch across, back loops only, except for the last stitch where you're going to half double crochet into the entire stitch. At the end, chain 1 and turn. All right, so I'm on that last stitch. I'm gonna just put the hook all the way through underneath the entire stitch and complete my half double crochet, and then chain 1 and turn. And now we're gonna do the same thing again for row number 3. We're gonna half double crochet in that first stitch in the gap, keeping that side nice tight and straight. It's a little bit hard to get your hook through at the beginning, but it's easier as you go. And then we're gonna do half double crochets, back loops only, all the way across. We're actually going to do this for row number 3 all the way until row number 50. And that's going to be where I come back. I'm gonna zoom through these rows because it's the exact same thing over and over and over again. We're just going to do 50 rows of this back loops only half double crochet, except for in the first and last stitch where we're using the entire stitch to keep the ends nice and tight. But half double crochet back loops only for the next up to row 50. You can add a row, take a row away. It's no big deal if you have a smaller head or if you have a bigger head and this doesn't make it all the way around your head. Add a couple of rows, no big deal. The assembly part is going to be the same regardless of how many rows you do, but for me, 50 rows fits just perfectly, nice and snug without being too tight around my head. So like I said, I'm gonna zoom through that part, and when I get to my 50 rows, I will show you how we're going to assemble this very easy, very basic beanie hat. All right, so I'm just coming up on my last few stitches here. I'm on my last row. And then it's going to be time to assemble. And from there, it's super quick. It's gonna be done before you know it. So let me just finish up these last stitches and then we will get into final assembly. I definitely made this more difficult for myself by having the 2 strands of yarn. If you just use 1 strand of yarn, you're gonna have a much easier time. It's been a lot tighter because I'm using 2 strands of yarn. But I like how the colors look. Hey there friends, just popping in to remind you to hit the like button, like the video. It's super helpful for the channel and I do really appreciate each and every one of you who hit that like button. And if you're new, hit the subscribe button and the little bell notification so that you know when I put out new videos. I usually put out an edited video on the weekends, but Monday through Friday I live stream 7 a.m. Eastern time until around 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. So make a tea and stop by for a chat. It's a really fun community and we talk about everything, so all are welcome. But yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. Okay, now you can go back to the video. All right, so there is the last stitch. Ugh. And now what I'm gonna do is final assembly. So to do that, what we're gonna do is fold over the rectangle. I can't even show you the whole rectangle in frame because it's long. Where is my measuring tape? Here you are. So the final length of the rectangle is 19 inches by 16.5. So 16.5, 17 inches is how long I like it, because then you get a nice folded over brim on your hat, which I like because it gives you this extra warmth here. So now we're gonna fold it over with the working loop in front. So we've got 2 pieces like that. I'm gonna put the hook back in, but first, what am I gonna do first? No, I'm going to first put the hook into that back side, into the first stitch, and I'm gonna just pull the loop from that first stitch through that hole. Then I'm going to go through that first stitch on the front side again and just pull the loop through there. So now we've attached the 2 pieces and they're both going through the first stitch on the same side. Through the first stitch, sorry, on both sides. Okay, now what we're gonna do is going into the top of the stitch only, both stitches, the tops only. So the first one's gonna be the chains that we started the hat with. The second piece is gonna be the tops of the stitch. We're gonna just slip stitch across. You can sew this, you can do a single crochet, you can do a slip stitch like me, but basically if you're doing a slip stitch, you're gonna insert the hook into both sides, wrap around your yarn and pull it through both sides and then pull it through the working loop. And just continue that all the way across until you make it to the end of the hat. At the end of that, you're gonna have a tube, a big long tube. And I will meet you back once I've got my tube done to show you the next step. All right, so now I've made it all the way back around. And now the next step, and this one is kind of a little bit of a variation on like the basic beanie. This is where we do a little bit of difference. We're gonna chain 30. 1, 2, 3, 29, and 30. Pull the chain through, cut your yarn. Where are my scissors? So cut your yarn, but leave a little tail, because now it's going to be time to do some weaving, and we're going to want to use a yarn needle for that. So this chain is going to be a reinforcement in a little bit, but first, thread your yarn needle. And then next, we're going to take the yarn needle and we're going to weave it in and out of each row, up and down through each row, all the way around. Just up and down, just like this. And the yarn is going to, you pull it through whenever you need to, and you want that whole chain to come with it. So it might be a little bit of wiggling required, but you want to get that chain through as well. All right, and then when you make it back to the beginning, pull that chain through, and you can pull really tight. Because the chain is so thick, you don't have to worry about the yarn breaking. That's something that happens to me whenever I make hats, when I do it this other ways. But this way you can really pull on it hard. And then take your yarn needle and just start stabbing it in, picking up some loops and pulling it through. You want to get that chain each time. And just keep pulling it through. Get little loops. You want to get like at least 2 pieces of yarn in each time you weave it so that you don't cause any breakage. But just do that around until you run out of chain, and then we're going to tie it off. But this is a good way to really secure your hat. It keeps it very secure. Like this will last many years because of this one extra step of adding that chain of 30. All right, and then when you're pretty much out of chain, just weave it under the other chain stitches a couple of times, and then you'll be able to pull it through your hole and make a nice tight knot. And I, again, do that a couple of times because I never want it to come out. So now that's real tight. You can trim your yarn off. And then, this looks like it's a super long tube. I know that looks a little crazy. I'm just gonna weave in the original end, and I'm gonna weave it back up through that seam where we've slip stitched the hat tube together. And last but certainly not least, we're gonna flip this inside out to make it a really long, again, it looks crazy long, I know it looks long, but then what you do is you fold up the brim and you fold it up a whole bunch, as much as you need to make it sit comfortably on your head. And you can roll it down just a little and you can have it be like a slouchy beanie, or you can fold it up a lot. You can also double roll it if you want to make it a little bit stiffer. You can do a double roll or even a triple roll if you want to get a little creative, and then it adds a little bit of stiffness to that hat. But that is actually how you make it. So let's get to some after shots. All right, friends, that's it. What do you think? How'd you do? Did you go along and make it with me, or are you making it now that you've watched the video, or are you just watching it for entertainment purposes? All of the above are okay, but let me know in the comments down below what you think about this pattern, and if you're going to be making one of these hats, one of these super basic, good patterns to just have in the back of your mind. When you need a gift to give someone, or if you're going to a handmade market, these are a great option for that type of thing, because they're really quick to work up and they're always a hit. Everybody loves receiving a big, wide-brimmed, comfy hat like this. So, again, if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the like button. It really does help the channel out. The YouTube algorithm needs the interaction, and I really like the interaction. So leave a comment, like the video, all that jazz, and that's all from me for today. I'll see you next time. Bye!